Welcome to Lifestyle Solopreneur, the community for entrepreneurs who put lifestyle first. Join your host Flavia Berys as she interviews successful lifestyle solopreneurs and shares ideas to help you find the perfect balance between lifestyle, business, and self. Flavia is an attorney, marketing expert, and founder of several online academies. She's been featured in major media including BBC World News, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Post, ESPN Television, and more. Join us for this episode of Lifestyle Solopreneur.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Lifestyle Solopreneur, the podcast. Today on this intro episode, let's talk a little bit about what a lifestyle solopreneur is and what you can expect from the podcast in the future. So a little background. Being a lifestyle solopreneur is not about swinging in a hammock on a tropical island and working a couple of hours per day from your laptop. It can be, but really that's not what defines the lifestyle solopreneur to me, because not everyone wants that life. Trust me, I have an active mind, I have a lot of varied interests, maybe that's you too, and sitting still in tropical humidity, watching the ocean, it's fun, but it's fun for about 2 hours, maybe 2 days. I've tried it before. I've tried it on more than one tropical island, actually. And I'm telling you from experience, there is a limit to how long somebody who likes to do lots of things can sit on a tropical island. So that means you can get the hammock scene out of your mind, even though I personally love to use the beach as a symbol of freedom. So, if being a lifestyle solopreneur is not about becoming a tropical island beach bum with passive income, then what is it? So here's the key. It's about becoming the kind of person who can go to an island and try that lifestyle on for size for a month and then decide to do something else. And to have your bank account grow while you tried out that beach bum life. It's also about being free, if you want, to just stay on that beach for the rest of your life and retire there, or at least for as long as you love that life. So see the difference? It's not about being a beach bum, it's about having the freedom to be that beach bum. It's about freedom, it's about choices, it's about experimenting and experiencing life. It's about creating a life that is not dependent on somebody else's agenda, somebody else's clock. It's about manifesting and intentionally crafting a life and creating a life that makes you feel very inspired, fulfilled, in love with your own life, and never bored. It's about refusing to remain trapped by whatever circumstances make you feel trapped. I see myself as someone who has climbed a mountain, who has accomplished something. I found an amazing view from where I am now, and I feel compelled in a way to sort of draw the map for everybody else who wants to be a lifestyle solopreneur. And I'm not alone. There are lots of lifestyle solopreneurs out there. I have the privilege of knowing many of them and the honor of interviewing many of them for this podcast. Personally, I've learned so much myself, even though I had started at a place where I thought, hey, I already have a lot to teach. I have really accomplished a lot of balance and financial success in my online business, and I want to help others do the same thing. Even though I came from that place, once I started interviewing other lifestyle solopreneurs, I realized how much further I can personally go, how much further we can all go, and we can all learn from each other. And that's why I'm so excited to be leading this particular community on this podcast. So you see, I am a lifestyle solopreneur. I believe that becoming one is a learned skill, not something we're born with. It's not inherent. And I think pretty much everybody can learn to structure their lives in a way that can help them live happily, fulfilled, free. But since not everyone's born knowing how to do it, it takes a little bit of work. I think it takes more than desire. I think you need a plan and a strategy. I think you need to surround yourself with a lot of other people who share similar goals and who also believe in this possibility. And if you can find a mentor who has already done it and is willing to inspire and guide you, that's great, even better. If you have family and friends who support you, who are on board and won't discourage you, won't try to dissuade you, then I think you're well ahead of most people. Because for a lot of people, the biggest obstacle, this sounds ironic, but the biggest obstacle is the very people that they're trying to help. So solopreneurs might be trying to build a better future for their family, but then they find that their family is not supportive or just doesn't feel that same inspiration or doesn't believe in the same possibilities. So they find a lot of resistance there. And I hope that's not true for you. I hope you and your family are all on board. Have your family and friends listen to this podcast, listen to the amazing guests that we have in store, and have it just become your go-to when you're commuting, when you are getting ready in the morning. Just have it play on your smartphone and listen to these guests, because I'm learning so much and I really hope that you take the opportunity to learn from them too. So if you clicked on this podcast, I know you already have the desire. I know you're at least maybe very curious, and I don't want to waste your time trying to inspire you or show you why you should want time freedom and the lifestyle of your choice. Instead, I want to use this podcast to help you strategize and create. I will motivate you by showing you the how instead of selling you on the why, because face it, we probably all know the why already. We feel the why every single day, but the how is worth everything. The reason I've lately become such an advocate of lifestyle is because of something that happened to me personally a few years ago. It's kind of personal, but I do want to share the story with you so that you understand a little bit about where I'm coming from personally. In the future, I will be interviewing guests, but in today's podcast episode, I'm going to tell you a little bit about your host, myself. It's interesting, I think, how one event in life can shape a whole trajectory of your future. And sometimes it can be something small, like starting to listen to a certain podcast, reading a certain book, going to a certain seminar. Could be a lot of different things. But sometimes it's a big event. Sometimes it's a health scare. Sometimes it's losing a job. Sometimes it's, getting a new job, finding out you hate it. Sometimes it's a graduation. Sometimes it's starting school. For me personally, it starts a few years back. I was sitting in a very nice window office in Silicon Valley. I was an attorney, I still am. I was doing legal work and putting in pretty long days, 15-hour days sometimes. Had a few overnights in there as an attorney. And it wasn't really unusual for me to spend every waking hour of the weekdays working, or at least sort of being tied to the work tether, if you know what I mean, the leash. I was checking my BlackBerry every time it beeped to see if it was something urgent or important. And yes, attorneys are complete tech dinosaurs, and we had to use BlackBerries, even though we all wished our law firms would let us use iPhones or Androids. Things are changing these days, but when this story is taking place, I was still on my little BlackBerry and tied to it. I mean, I slept with it next to me on the night table, and it was the first thing I checked when I woke up, last thing I checked before falling asleep, and sometimes my legal work would go into my dreams, so I wouldn't even really get a break from it while I was sleeping. So, but for an office dweller, I think I was actually pretty lucky. I had very good coworkers. The other attorneys in my particular small group, all the offices right around mine, was just great people. Our clients ranged from huge Fortune 50 companies to startup tech companies. Remember, I worked in Silicon Valley, to small mom and pop investors who had grown these real estate empires, and we got to help them manage those empires and grow them even more. It was a good life, but it was a lot of time. It was a lot of time at work. I mean, imagine taking your day. If you take any person's average day, the 24 hours that they have in that day, and you lay it out like a pie chart. You look at it visually like a pie chart. You can start to see how they spend their time. For me, my pie chart, if you were to look at it, was taken up mostly by sleep and work. And the sleep and work pie slices were the largest. I had just a little slice of time left over for friends, family, hobbies, working out, for fun. So that was a pretty sad little slice. But despite that, I was pretty happy, even in my office life. Because I've always been a believer in lifestyle, even when I was a full-time employee in a difficult, demanding job. So I took that tiny little slice of non-work, non-sleep time, and, I really made the most of it. I really did. I woke up at 5 a.m. extra early so that I could go to group workouts with a truly amazing coach. Saul, if you're listening to this, love you, man. I really do. Great workouts, so I stayed healthy. I took trapeze classes. Believe it or not, there are circus schools all over the country if you ever want to take circus classes. I took horseback riding classes, every Saturday, every weekend. I'd be doing that, or I'd be traveling to see my family. And I just spent as much quality time as I could with family and friends. And I got pretty good at being able to stop checking my BlackBerry and turn my mind off of work when I was with family and friends so I could be really present with them. And that was key. So I wasn't unhappy as a full-time worker. In other words, I did find a way to squeeze happiness into my very, very busy, very demanding schedule, even if it wasn't easy to do it. But I did it. So let's fast forward a few years. As fate would have it, and sometimes this is how fate works, someone recommended a book to me, and the topic was online entrepreneurship. Somebody else forwarded me an email from one of those internet business gurus, and I ended up attending a few conferences where I learned about the different kinds of online business models. And I'd always been into tech and the web world because I worked in Silicon Valley, so it's always kind of there on the surface. And before law school, so way back when, and I remember I knew that the internet was going to be a big thing, and I learned how to make some small websites. So I was always into it, but I derailed myself, went to law school, became a lawyer, and sort of didn't really pursue all of the entrepreneurial avenues that had been open to me prior to law school. So I went to these conferences, read these emails, got on some mailing lists, and I was really intrigued. I was curious. And best of all, and this is what I'm hoping this podcast helps with for you, I was really inspired. I was inspired by the stories. I was inspired by the people. I've always had sort of a, if they can do it, I can do it attitude in life. If I don't know how, I'll figure it out. I've always been kind of like that, which is in a way why I was taking trapeze classes or learning to ride a horse well into my late 20s. I was just taking up these interesting hobbies. I own a motorcycle. I ride a motorcycle. It's very unusual for women to ride motorcycles, but I'm a girl gone wheeled. And so I've always been sort of like, hey, if someone else can do it and it looks fun and I want to do it, I'll figure out how to do it. So I dove in. And I spent some of that small, tiny slice of free time that I had available to me on building some websites. I wrote a short how-to book on a topic that I am an expert in. I self-published it to Amazon and CreateSpace. I built some print-on-demand product stores online. I started holding paid live webinars where I taught students on a variety of topics. My favorite thing to teach is rental property owners, real estate owners. I teach them how to be do-it-yourself landlords. I use my legal background and my experience as a real estate investor to teach landlords to do it better. I built a website, landlordprep.com. I was teaching workshops on that topic and others. I was selling resources online like template document forms and other downloadable PDF products. And incredibly, it all started working. It was sort of an experiment at first, but pretty soon I was making an income from these online projects. The money wasn't huge at first, so it trickled in, but eventually it got over the six-figure mark, which for a lot of people, me included, is sort of an interesting mark. Once you reach six figures, you realize something is real. A business is working. It's making real money, substantial money. And when I reached that level, that's when I knew that the online space, it really is truly the new Main Street for small business owners. It really is. It works. It's not easy. It's not instant, contrary to what some people teach, but it's truly a way to earn an income and build a business from anywhere that has an internet connection and an available computer. It really is. It's the future. Back in the day, business owners, You may have started a business back in the day. You had to sign a 3 or 5 year lease for a new store, for maybe your restaurant, your bar, your clothing store. You had to buy insurance for, liability insurance for that location. You had to do all sorts of things and commit all sorts of finances and have all sorts of startup capital, hire employees to run your store for you, all of that. But nowadays, the internet really is the new Main Street, and the rents can be very, very low. The startup costs can be very, very minimal, comparatively speaking. So let's, back to my story. I was making money online, and you may be wondering, okay, so what did I do? Did I quit my job? Did I say sayonara, enjoy the freedom that this new revenue stream was giving me? And the answer is nope, I didn't. I didn't quit my job. Yes, I was making revenue from these new activities, these new projects online, but I didn't quit being a lawyer because the ego is kind of a funny thing. I think human psychology as a whole is a really funny thing. We're all so illogical sometimes, all of us. There's just no getting away from it. It's what we get as the downside to our genius, because it's no doubt that I think humans are the most intelligent force on the planet. Yet sometimes we can also be sort of blind. Specifically, we can be blind to these ties that bind us. I mean, people talk about golden handcuffs, when you get so tied to a certain salary or a job that you can't let go. And we can be so trapped in a cage, yet sitting in that cage, we don't notice that there's an unlocked door. We just don't notice, and we just sit in that cage. So I did not look at this new revenue I was making as a door to my freedom from working 15-hour days. I saw it sort of as bonus money, like an extra windfall that could disappear at any moment, because who knew when Google could change its algorithms, or Facebook ads no longer work, or they're no longer offered, or they get expensive, or a competitor would swoop in and take my market share. I just didn't feel comfortable with that revenue stream as something I could count on. I didn't want to rely on it. I didn't want to become dependent on it. That's kind of the surface thinking, but I think deep down the issue maybe ran a little deeper. I think, looking back, and I still think there's this going on for me, but I didn't want to give up the identity of being an attorney, a worker, someone with a job title that other people understand. I didn't want to go from saying, I'm a lawyer, to saying, I'm an internet marketer. So my ego kept me a little bit trapped, and my ego and my fear of relying on income that seems kind of magical, like a soap bubble that could pop and leave me stranded, both those things, they kept me trapped. And I continued to do the 15-hour days. I know, sounds crazy. Even when I think back on it, it probably sounds insane to you. But then something happened. A family member, very close to me, needed me. And I couldn't be there for her because I was sitting in an office chair 15 hours per day at the beck and call of the law firm and the many clients who expected immediate responses to their emails and phone calls. So in other words, I was too busy to be there for my own family in a time of need, because I was too busy fulfilling the needs of these clients and my employer. So I finally woke up. That's when I finally woke up. I realized I was making enough money online through royalties, sales, teaching, to be able to really cut back on the work I was doing at the law firm. So I was able to cut down my attorney work to about half-time. And with the online income supplementing what I was making from my part-time legal work, life really went from black and white to full color. And at that point, I started splitting my time like this. I had spent about 5 to 10 hours per week on legal work. I was still doing the work of an attorney. And then about maybe 2 to 4 hours on my online businesses and teaching workshops, teaching online, lots of teaching. And I was teaching some classes at law school as an adjunct law professor, and also at the local community college as well, which I do to this day. And my work-life balance at that point was perfect, because I designed it to be exactly what I needed. And I realized that my soul, and I suspected every person's soul, is designed to be happiest when the workday is short. How short? I really think that depends on the person. So at that point, my income was about 50-50 between legal work and online income. But something did change quite dramatically. 3 years ago, I was pregnant with my first child, a daughter. And when I was 7 months pregnant, I started to feel intense pain. And I went to the hospital and I was scared because it was 2 months early before my due date, so I didn't think it was labor. But we were really worried because it felt like what I imagined labor would feel like, and nobody wants to go into labor 2 months early. Sadly, I ended up having an emergency C-section. My daughter was born a premature baby, at 31 weeks of gestation. And that's pretty early. And the shock really still haunts me to this day. The shock we felt in the hospital when the doctor told us what was happening. We were very scared, and she was born tiny, 3 pounds, 13 ounces. She could fit in my cupped hands, and I'm not a huge person. I have small hands. And she was that little. She was in the NICU in an incubator. She was hooked up to tubes to monitor her breathing, heartbeat, feeding, everything. She was a human pincushion. There were feeding tubes coming out of her belly button. She was pretty frail. She was tiny, and we were really helpless. So my whole world changed that day in lots of ways. The hospital was really generous, and they did something that not many hospitals do. They gave me a room in the hospital to live in. You cannot imagine how small a preemie is until you actually physically are in the room seeing one. I mean, photos don't even tell the story. You have to be there. She was so tiny, she didn't even cry because crying takes too much energy, and she needed that energy to grow. So we spent a month at the hospital, and we got to take our daughter, her name's Catalina, home once she reached 5 pounds in weight. At the end of that time, when things finally settled into a routine and Kat's health was no longer a huge question mark, I took stock of what had happened to my work and income. And here's the kicker. Here's the really interesting part. My revenue and income from the legal work that I'd always been doing had dropped to zero. It's the classic trading time for dollars scenario, very common. But my money and revenue from passive income sources, virtually unchanged, constant. It had kept flowing in like clockwork while I lived in the hospital for a month, while I took care of a newborn for several more months. The income I made from book royalties, online information, product sales, real estate rentals, and other relatively passive income sources really hadn't been affected at all by me dropping out of existence for several months. So, legal work zero, online income and passive income constant, no change. So I know it seems obvious probably to you listening to this that, okay, the online stuff, the businesses I built, that's what's building a legacy for me and my family. It's obvious to you, but it took this experience for me to really see it, that every single person in our society needs to set up their finances so that they have streams of income that are independent of their hourly labor. So to be clear, I don't believe that everyone should quit their jobs. Jobs can be fun. They can be fulfilling. They can be great. Maybe you like your coworkers, or the work you get to do in the world fulfills you. That's great. But I believe you should not be dependent on that work for your entire livelihood, because jobs disappear. Disability leave ends. Unemployment, income, those checks can stop coming. You just need to be more independent than somebody who lives just from the revenue that they get from one employer. So I really believe you should be able to take a month off of work to be with a loved one, like I did in a hospital, or maybe a happier situation, hopefully a happier situation, I think you should be able to take a year off of work to go travel and explore and do different things. I believe you should be able to build multiple businesses, put them on autopilot when and if possible, so that you can pursue other things. Maybe build more businesses, maybe take time off, maybe just spend more time with family. So mostly, I guess you can boil it down to this. I believe in freedom and flexibility. And that is why I'm an outspoken champion of the lifestyle solopreneur movement. And I want to bring the voices and stories of other solopreneurs who have done it, to bring those ideas, that inspiration in. Today, I am living exactly the life that I designed for myself and my family. It was an intentional design. I'm constantly working to keep us on course, because being a lifestyle solopreneur is not a set it and forget it process. I want to help solopreneurs like you avoid becoming a miserable millionaire by teaching techniques that create balance and maintain free time. Free time is so important. Being your own boss shouldn't mean that you become your own worst tyrant. So let's do this together. In this podcast series, I will tell you the stories of other solopreneurs. I'll share their stories with you through interviews, their journeys, their mistakes, their challenges, their advice, and their victories. Let's celebrate all of our victories. So in this podcast, I will show you how to structure and evaluate business ideas through the stories of other lifestyle solopreneurs. There is an entire community of lifestyle solopreneurs out here. We have learned valuable lessons, and we have learned how to put lifestyle first. So I am so excited to have you along on this journey as we learn from other lifestyle solopreneurs. I hope that you either have or build an amazing business that I can showcase right on this podcast, that I can showcase you and your journey and your struggles and your challenges and your victories, so that your story can help other lifestyle solopreneurs on their journey. So let's do this together. I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss a single episode. And my goal is to make this your favorite go-to business podcast. See you soon. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and if you leave a review on iTunes, I promise I will read every single review. If you know someone who makes a full-time living from part-time work, and maybe this is you, please visit lifestylesolopreneur.com to nominate a guest or to nominate yourself. Because remember this, money doesn't buy happiness. But money in the hands of a happy person, there is no greater tool.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Get Shift Done program. It's a lifestyle-changing online class to help you define your business and lifestyle ambitions, and to set goals in a way you've never experienced before. This class will 10x your daily productivity with methods that will blow your mind. And if you use a coupon code podcast, the class tuition is 99% off. Visit GetShiftDone.com to enroll today.